Hi, it's Chris Wright here from Tyro Security. This is video 2 we've done in partnership with the Diana Initiative. It's to help hiring managers try and stop the bottlenecks that they might be finding in their hiring process. So this is the second video and it's actually covering the interview process. So I've got a saying I've kind of adapted from something that we see commonly in recruitment, and I call it time kills all feels. So what does that mean? A long, poor quality interview process that results in candidates that think you're not keen on them, results in candidates that take another job before they even get to your final stages, candidates that end up with multiple offers and lots of processes going on, which can completely change what they required or what they were looking for at the beginning of your process and what they're now looking for, things like salary, other benefits. Also, it can also cause, you take a lot of time, your candidates then have a lot more to think about, and all of a sudden you're delaying your hiring, and that might mean that you don't get your first choice and you miss out on your second and third choice candidates. So we're going to focus on these three things. It's going to be focusing on who interviews, going to focus on how do they interview, and then how do you go around gathering feedback. So, talk about interview panels. I think it's really important that they're very lean. I've got to say, in the 20 years I've been in recruitment, it was very common for me to see processes with just one or two people interviewing. So literally two people on the interview panel. Two of them said yes, they bring people in. Now it seems much more common to see maybe 4, 5, 6 different people interviewing, even for non-exec positions. And I think if we were seeing that people were staying longer in their positions now, we'd be saying, all right, I can understand why that's happening. But the fact is, we're not seeing any sort of increases in how long people stay in jobs. So, I like to talk about keeping your interview panel as lean as possible. So if they don't need to be on the panel, they shouldn't be on the panel. If this is part of somebody's role growing and you want them to be part of the interview process because they're going to be doing that as part of their role at some point, you see them as somebody that should be involved, that's great. But until they're ready to do an interview on your own, they should maybe just sit in with somebody else's and do that rather than adding an additional interview stage. Also, if you've got people in your interview panel that have very little time for interviewing, you should really think about alternatives to that person. They're clearly very, very busy, because the delays that they can cause real big issues. Remember, time kills all feels, right? And be very aware of extra people on the panel. The more people you have on the panel, the less likelihood you're going to get 100% agreement across the board that every person likes that person. And it's more likely that you're going to end up with either no hire at all. And sometimes we see companies come to us and they've been looking for 9 months. And often it's when we sit down, these are the first things we go through, the processes, we see issues. And so it can cause no hire at all, or you get a hire and that hire hasn't got everybody's 100% buy-in because you've gone with the majority. Are you really setting that person up for success? Are they going to come in and work with the team and do well with somebody there who's thinking, well, I said no to this person? And, do you want somebody that's like, I told you so, I told you they wouldn't work out. So just bear that in mind. Let's keep it as lean as possible. Cut through, do you really need all those people on the panel? So once you've got that, you then got to think about what do those people interview for? So each individual person you've got, what are they interviewing for? Look at your essentials on the job description. We did that in the last video. Look at the essentials. What are they interviewing for? This person is interviewing for this. This person is interviewing for this. These two people both interview for this. Do you need both of them on there? So start thinking about that. Do they understand what they are interviewing for? Are they all in the same page? Have you actually had your whole interview panel in a meeting and discussed what's going to happen during that interview? Have you discussed, well, this person is going to be interviewing for this, this person is going to be interviewing for this? Are they all on the same page? Have you actually discussed the plan? You'd be surprised how many times people have not actually done that. So remember, as I always say, kiss, 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 keep it simple. So you're thinking about the quality of your interview process and also the quality of the people interviewing. How do they interview? So just remember when they, when do they actually interview? Have you got the people in the right order? Nothing worse than a candidate or yourself even going through wasting all this time, both your time, the candidate's time, going through all of this process only to find at the end that it's a no, and it's a no for something that should have been picked up right at the beginning. So have you got people in the right order doing their interviews, right? This could save you a lot of time, and you got to think about your branding and what it says about a company when people get right the way to the end and it doesn't work out, right? Also, how do these people interview? This is such a common issue, and hiring managers don't, like, there's a lot of assuming going on. There's a lot of assuming this is how my colleague interviews. They don't actually know. So as the hiring manager, this person's going to work for you. Have you sat in on an interview with every single person on your interview panel? If not, why not? You should know exactly how they interview. You should know what they're interviewing for. And you should do that on a regular basis. You don't need to sit in every one, but whether that's, if you're, depending on how often you're hiring, should that be once a month? How often is it? But you should definitely do that because it does change. People interview one way in front of you, and then, give it a couple of months, they might have changed their interview style or the questions they're asking. So it's really important that you sit in on the interviews. It can bring absolutely eye-opening results. It's really common to see duplication of areas. Two people interviewing for exactly the same thing when they're not supposed to. That's not what you discussed. Maybe somebody interviewing for one area and then just going completely off into a completely different area, like a completely different topic, and not even covering the area they originally agreed to, and inappropriate questions, questions that HR certainly wouldn't like to know of being asked, and lawyers love that they're being asked. So just bear that in mind. So last part, feedback. Fast, in-depth feedback. This is what you should be looking at. Now, when you book an hour of somebody's time to do an interview, are you booking 15 minutes straight afterwards for them to take the time to give the feedback while it's fresh in their mind? Whether that's following whatever process your company actually has, you want to make sure you get detailed feedback, and you want it at the time. You don't want them to think 4 days later, what was it? That was that person. I've actually had feedback come from the wrong person because they're getting mixed up. Because they've interviewed so many people, they're mixing up the interview. So it's really important that the feedback, time's booked to do that. We constantly see people on the interview panel give really superficial feedback, not in depth, and that often take days to actually give it. In-depth feedback, whether it's positive or negative, is really useful for recruiters, HR, for people to do a better job by you, to make sure that you get people that are a better fit for what you're looking for. So it's really important that your feedback is given in depth, even positive feedback. Positive feedback's so hard to get in depth. Just to tell, I really like this about this person. This is what we discussed on their resume. It was really interesting. It's a great fit for this. Just make sure that you do give that detailed feedback. Speed's really important, so that kind of moves us on to getting it to the candidate quickly as well. You've got to ensure what your company process is for giving feedback. Who gives the feedback? How does it happen? When does it happen? You want to make sure there are absolute minimal delays between getting that feedback and giving it to the candidate and moving the process on, right? We've seen candidates lost both from the interviewers not getting their feedback quickly enough to HR. We speak to HR and internal recruiters maybe, and they're telling us we still not heard from this person. Or we're talking to the hiring manager or CISO and they haven't had the feedback yet. So it's really important you emphasize how the feedback comes very quickly. Likewise, we've seen feedback where we get told the feedback's been passed to HR and they'll get back to you, and a day, 2 days later, we're hearing the feedback. In some cases, it's actually positive feedback, which is just insane. This is something you need to do quickly, right? Quick feedback, especially when it's positive, makes candidates feel wanted, right? And the opposite's true when, the exact opposite is true when you're delaying that feedback. So, remember, let's get it done. Let's get it done quickly. And the industry is very, very small. Right? Every interview, your team, your company, you as an individual, you know, you're being looked at by that candidate, and that candidate's going to tell other candidates, going to tell other people in the industry what it was like to be interviewed by you. So you've got to think of that when you're going through this process. So look, that's the end of video 2. Don't forget, time kills all feels, right? Let's get this sped through. Now, you can contact me via Twitter. I'm not on there an awful lot. When you see me tweeting stuff, it's usually from my LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the best way to connect with me. Make sure you put something in the note that, you know, you've seen this talk, you know, something along those lines. I get a lot of junk, as I'm sure everybody else does. You know, a lot of people that want to connect that, you know, are trying to do all sorts of things, probably nefarious stuff as well, bearing in mind that I run a cyber security company, so I have to be very careful. So just take time, a bit of time and put a note in there. You can also check out our website, www.tyrosec.com. You'd be able to connect and find me via that as well. So look, I really appreciate your time. Thank you again for Diana Initiative to, you know, working with us to allow us to do this. And I hope you found it really useful.